For a partnership account, registration is optional. Okay, if the partners want the partnership deed to be registered, they can get it registered, otherwise it is optional. For the rest of the constitution, that is LLP, private limited company and one-person company, registration is required. The registration is done at ROC, that is Registrar of Companies. Coming to personal liability, that is what happens if the business fails and the company winds up. So if the company has some dues to be paid to outside parties, what will happen then? In case of proprietorship and partnership constitutions, the liability is unlimited. Unlimited in the sense, the promoter is personally, or the partners are personally liable for the liabilities of the firm, which means if the firm has made some debts for the business purpose and the company has failed and it is about to be closed down. Now the firm has made some debts from outside parties, and after selling all the assets of the company, still there are some debts to be repaid. Then the owners, that is the partners or the proprietors, own assets like their flats, their gold. They have to somehow sell those even the personal assets and clear off the company dues. That is why we say that's unlimited liability. Say the promoter has invested just 10 lakhs in the business. He's running the business with initial investment of 10 lakhs. He's running the business with only that amount. He's not incurred even extra 1 rupee beyond that. But if the business fails and say the debts at the time of winding up the company, all the debts put together to the banks, to the outside parties, to raw material supplies, everybody put together is 15 lakhs. So after selling the assets of the company, he has realized 10 lakhs. Still 5 lakhs is to be paid. That 5 lakhs has to pay from his own sources. That's what we say unlimited liability. Limited liability means the liability will be restricted to how much investment the promoters have made. That happens in the case of LLP, private limited company and one-person company. That is, the directors there are not personally liable for the liabilities of the company. Okay, so that's the difference between limited liability and unlimited liability. Then the minimum number of members for forming this constitution is 2, except in case of proprietorship, where it is only one person is sufficient to form the proprietorship form. But whereas for the others, partnership, LLP, private limited company and one-person company, minimum 2 members are required. And the maximum number in case of partnership is 20. So if a group of people start a partnership firm, up to 20 is the maximum number of members permitted in the partnership. In case of LLP is unlimited, in case of private limited company is 200, and in case of one-person company it is 2. Then existence. What happens if, say, the proprietor dies? In case of proprietorship firm, if the proprietor dies, that is the end of the firm. The firm has no existence. Partners, in case of partnership firm, the existence of the firm is dependent on the partners. If one of the partners dies, the firm can be dissolved, but it can also be continued. Okay, those are options there. In case of others, LLP, private limited company and one-person company, existence is not dependent on the directors, right? For example, you have a company like a big company, a professionally managed company like say ITC, say Oberoi Hotels or Reliance. Those are private limited companies, so where the ownership is spread across a large number of people. They are shareholders. See, the death of one director or one promoter does not dissolve the company. Company will go on, right? So the existence of the company there is not dependent on the directors. It depends on is entirely it's a perpetual process. That is not the case in case of proprietorship form. Okay, and then regular meetings have to be conducted in case of private limited company. In the rest of the constitutions, it's not required, but board meetings have to be conducted periodically in case of private limited companies. Okay, let's discuss about something about regulation of companies. In India, the companies are regulated under the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, MCA, and regulation is required because in order to protect the shareholders of the company. We will discuss about stock markets and shares in a later chapter, but individual investors will invest in the shares of the company, people like you and me, and our interests have to be protected. So there is a regulator called, in case of share market, there is SEBI. For companies as a whole, the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, they oversee the functioning of the companies, not day-to-day companies, but they'll form broad rules. That is in order to protect the interest of the common people like you and me. Now each company is allotted something called a CIN, that is Corporate Identity Number, You can interpret this as like Aadhaar number. Like each one of us has an individual Aadhaar number that uniquely identifies a person. Similarly, for companies, Ministry of Corporate Affairs at the time of registration of the company will issue a CIN, that is corporate identity number, to each company. It's a unique number and it's allotted at the time of registration. Now the company is registered. Once it submits all the required documents, there will be some set of documents which the company has to submit as per rules, and then it will be issued something called Certificate of Incorporation by ROC. ROC stands for Register of Companies. So the Register of Companies will issue something called Certificate of Incorporation, which is proof that the company has submitted all the relevant documents and is now incorporated. So certificate of, you'll be asked in interviews, what is Certificate of Incorporation? It is an evidence that all the legal requirements regarding registration are complied with, and the legal entity now exists in the name of the company. So this is a sample certificate of incorporation. It looks like this. Now there are some important documents for a company. Two of the most important are Memorandum of Association and Articles of Association. They will tell us about the nature of the business and the extent of powers. Let us see brief points about them. Memorandum of Association sets down the constitution of a company. It's a basic document, and every company must have its own Memorandum of Association. Basically, it tells about what are the permitted activities this company can do and some of the important information. We have some various clauses in Memorandum of Association, but the most important one is to say name clause. Name clause is the clause where it states the name of the company, and it ends with limited in case of public companies, and in case of private companies it ends with private limited. Then there is a situation clause which mentions the state in which this company is registered. Okay, so this decides the jurisdiction of the court in case of disputes. Then there is an object clause. There's a very important clause. The object clause tells us what are the activities the company proposes to engage in. From a legal point of view, this is very important, because if the company engages in activity that is not mentioned in the object clause, it is considered ultra vires. That is, it's beyond the purpose of the company. Then there is a liability clause. The liability of members is limited, as we already discussed. There will be a capital clause. There's the amount of share capital which the company is going to be registered with, and we'll discuss about share capital later. From a banker's point of view, bankers see the Memorandum of Association and they look into the clauses. The important clauses are whether this company has power to borrow money. A company just cannot borrow money from banks without that point mentioned in the Memorandum of Association. The Memorandum of Association should permit the company to borrow money. So there are other clauses as well. Power to borrow money, power to mortgage property. So if banks ask security to be deposited, some property in the name of the company, the Memorandum of Association should permit that. Powers to mortgage property, powers to give security guarantee, etc. Right? The banks will also see objects clause to ensure that the purpose for which the company is applied loan conforms to the objects clause. So a sample Memorandum of Association looks like this. Then there is another document called Articles of Association. Articles of Association is a document which prescribes the rules and bylaws for the general management of the company. This is for the internal administration of the company. You can think it of it as a rule book for the company. Now this is subsidiary to the Memorandum of Association, and the provisions which it usually contains are the name of the company, the place of business, the activity to be undertaken, details of shares like number of shares, value of each share, number of members of the board of directors, the details of the AGM, that is the annual general meeting, such as what is the agenda items to be discussed, how notices to be given to shareholders, and other details. Those are the documents for the company. In respect of partnership, the most important document is partnership deed. So when, say, two or more people come together to form a company, it's known as partnership firm, and the partnership firms will be having a partnership deed at the time of coming together to form a business. They'll write on a document known as partnership deed. It's a legal document. Basically, the partnership deed is to avoid unnecessary misunderstandings among the partners in case of disputes. Okay, say two friends might come together, but once the business starts, there might be some misunderstanding, like in what share the profit has to be shared between them, those sort of things. So those sort of things will be detailed in the partnership deed. So it is a legal document. Now the partnership deed may be registered for safety, but it is optional. It's not mandatory. Registration will be safe because in future one of the partners say destroy or mutilate the deed, then the deed will be still available. Okay. Then the partnership deed must be printed on a non-judicial stamp paper with a value of 100 or more. We'll discuss stamp papers and types of stamp papers later. But for the moment, remember that partnership deed must be printed on a non-judicial stamp paper. And partnership agreement is usually signed in the presence of all the partners, and each of the partners will retain a signed copy of this partnership deed for their records. So this is a sample partnership deed. This is how it looks like. It will be printed on a non-judicial stamp paper. So the questions in this chapter that you have to be prepared are: name some types of constituents, that is sole proprietorship, partnership, those we discussed. What is unlimited liability, that we discussed. Which business constitution have unlimited liability? So proprietorship firm and partnership firm will have unlimited liability. Which business have limited liability? The rest. So what is the maximum number of members in a partnership? We discussed. What is the maximum number of members in a private limited company? What is the regulating authority for companies in India? Why regulation is required? To protect the common man's interest. In case of listed companies, it is to protect the interest of the shareholders. What is CIN? We discussed. What is the importance of certificate of incorporation? Discussed. What are the two important documents for a company? Memorandum and articles. So what is Memorandum of Association? What are the important clauses in Memorandum of Association? What is objects clause and what is its importance? We discussed all this. What is articles of association? What is partnership deed? And is registration of partnership deed compulsory? No, it's not compulsory. It is optional.